Welcome. Fred, looks like rain again out there.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Well, I was going to get to that, Fred. As usual, my rusty, trusty sidekick, Fred the True Stafford, just got back from a campaign out east, didn't you?
What?
East of Eau Claire? Were you down in Fall Creek or something?
No.
Okay, just checking. Well, anyway, this is the Cow Report, Fred, and we are coming to you live, and we'll be taking phone calls on the Cow phone coming up here in a few minutes, and that number's what is that number, Fred? 839-5067.
And we're coming to you from the mortuary, right?
Well, Fred, I don't know about that.
It's not a live show, it's a dead show.
No, it's live, Fred.
Oh.
Now,
just checking.
This is the Cow Report, Fred. It's not the Conservative Caucus or whatever that thing was you had Friday night. All right, now, Fred. As usual, on this program, we try and stump you, Fred.
Yeah.
We're going to start off here early. You're still batting 1,000, aren't you?
I don't think so. But go ahead.
When did you miss one? I don't recall any message there.
Yeah.
All right, Fred. Well, I've only got 3 dates for you to think about today. October 16th, 17th, and the 19th. I skipped the 18th in case you've been studying this stuff at home, trying to brush up on it. So I skipped one day here to throw you off. So we're going to go, Fred, we're going to go back to 1863 on this one.
1863. That's, I can't remember. I know that Columbus discovered America on October the 12th.
Yeah, there wasn't much fanfare this year about that, was there?
No.
Columbus Day, except the post offices are being closed and
right.
kind of messing up the mail all that week, slowing it down. But Fred, this was 1863. Of course, you know that the Civil War was going on then.
The Civil War was going on.
And
1863, could that have been
well, I haven't even asked you the question yet.
The beginning of the Battle of Gettysburg?
I haven't even asked you the question yet, Fred. I haven't even gave you the date. October 16th.
October 16th.
President Lincoln rewarded a certain general for his early victories in the Civil War by giving him command of the military division of the Mississippi. Who was that famous general?
Sherman.
Who was that famous general that later went on to become the President of the United States?
Oh, U.S. Grant.
There you have it, Fred. You've kept your batting average intact there, 100%. That's the way we like to see it. All right, Fred. Well, Fred, there's some important stuff coming up tonight. Since this show is live, we might as well put in a little political commercial here. And Fred, tonight there's a big debate up at North High School. Yep.
That's right.
And I don't know if you're going to be there or not, but I've been invited to it.
Well, see if we can't get some tomatoes.
Well, speaking of tomatoes, I got an article here that has a tomato on the front. It was a New York Times Magazine Sunday edition. Anti-Politics was the title on the front. It's a big article about politics in the United States. And there was a tomato on the front of there now. But anyway, Fred, there's a debate tonight, and I've got some particulars on that debate. And they are...
Yes, they are what?
It's going to be at North High School, and I think it starts at 7 p.m. And what are you doing over there, shaving, or are you paying attention here? We're on the air,
yes,
Fred.
I know.
Okay, here it is, the League of Women Voters of Eau Claire County and Western Wisconsin Press Club are putting on a joint debate for the 3rd Congressional District, and that debate will be Monday night, Fred. Tonight.
Tonight.
October 17th. And we have an extra mic right here if somebody needs one. And that's at North High School Auditorium, Fred, 2700 Mercury Avenue. And the debate starts at 7 o'clock to 8:30 p.m.
Yes.
I understand that you talked into the mic and broke it. Is that the truth? Is that the facts or what?
No, it didn't work.
Huh.
Not working. what I told you.
Well, you know, Roy Rogers Hoff usually is up on that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I guess they named him Roy Rogers Hoff because his parents reminded him of Hopalong Cassidy.
Yeah.
So that's
I
why
thought
they,
it was Roy Rogers they were.
oh, that's why they named him Roy Rogers Hoff, because his parents thought he looked just like Hopalong Cassidy from the old
I think you
television
got it
series.
mixed up there. He looks more like the Lone Ranger.
Okay, Fred. Well, you know, Fred, you and I have been discussing this for many, many years.
We have?
And that's the problem with aspartame. That's that stuff you put in your pop, and they even have a synthetic sweetener called Equal. In the pop, they call it NutraSweet. You know, it used to just be Tab, Fred. Remember how rotten that Tab tasted back in the 60s?
Well, I thought that Tab and Coke and Pepsi don't taste very good to me. It couldn't pay me to drink them.
Well, that's a good thing that your mic ain't working, Fred. You know what? We're working on that, though. If you could see what's going on behind me. But we won't talk about that. There you go, Fred. There's a new mic for you, and
Oh,
we're gonna get you mic'd up here, Fred, because
That's
we
right.
got to have your input.
Yes.
It's a good thing people didn't hear your answer to that first question I gave you. There.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's working.
All right.
See,
Anyway, Fred, this aspartame is a headache for America's health.
Thank you.
And this Dr. Ralph Watson, Director of Behavioral Medicine for the Western Reserve Care System in Ohio, estimates that 35 to 40% of the population is vulnerable to the side effects of aspartame. And the FDA has received over 6,000 complaints on this stuff, Fred. Now, what's your research on that? What have you found out over the years?
Well, I haven't really researched it, but I'm smart enough to know that if it's natural, it may be good. If it's unnatural, chemical, etc., it may cause a lot of harm. And I believe that coal tar sweeteners and so forth do cause harm.
Now, Fred, if I'm not mistaken, I think that this stuff is made by Monsanto, a division of Monsanto. NutraSweet is.
Oh, well, then it should be good.
The same people that brought us
That was
BGH,
BGH, right.
RBST, RBGH. They kind of keep us guessing on what they're calling it. But anyway, Fred, they've done the same thing with this. They call it NutraSweet, they call it aspartame, but it's a synthetic sweetener. It tricks your body into believing that you're taking real sugar into the body without actually doing so. You're taking a chemical into the body. But the FDA says well over 6,000 complaints, but here's some of the complaints they're getting on it, Fred. Some of our patients have such severe reactions that we felt that ethically we couldn't continue the study. Even in the abbreviated study, reported problems include sleep disruptions, headaches, nausea, and mood changes. That's from Dr. Watson of the Director of Behavioral Medicine. And Dr. Watson said that there should be at least warnings about potential reactions on products containing aspartame.
I saw a woman on the 700 Club yesterday, I think it was, and she had been using that and having all kinds of problems and couldn't figure out what was wrong until she cut out her take-in of artificial sweeteners, especially aspartame, and she began to get better.
Now, another real serious problem with it, Fred, is eye problems.
Mm-hmm.
This same report, there have been many reports of serious eye problems seemingly related to aspartame. As far back as 1985, a woman named Shannon Roth said that her blindness came from drinking too much aspartame in her, or consuming too much aspartame. And in 1988, Dr. H.J. Roberts tested 551 aspartame-sensitive individuals. And his survey showed that 25% of them had eye problems, 25% reported severe depression,
Yeah, that's this woman did too on 700 Club.
16% claimed marked personality changes, and 16% reported heart problems.
Hmm.
And Roberts also believes that aspartame plays some part in the recent increase in brain cancer among women who do react in greater numbers to aspartame. Now, Fred, you'd think what I brought up, and so is Pat Robertson, Fred, that this stuff is made, or it's similar to wood alcohol. Now, what happened to people who drank wood alcohol back in the when you couldn't get booze on the open market?
Well, they became blind.
Now they're starting to show up eye problems with this aspartame. There are those who say that aspartame is much the same nature as the wood alcohol that was in so-called moonshine liquor, which made people blind in the days of Prohibition. And Pat Robertson says, we are dealing with a runaway federal agency which is almost dictatorial in its powers, and they even want to define some vitamins as prescription drugs. Instead of giving people innocent vitamins which really do no harm, they want to take them away, and yet they refuse to deal with the problem of something that could have serious side effects in 20 to 30% of the people that use it.
Well, it would seem to me that since they probably approved this, some of those people that have been affected by it should sue the federal government for giving them approval.
So, Fred, if this is closely related in nature to wood alcohol, no wonder they're showing problems with their eyes at a young age. That's one of the reasons. But this was a fact sheet that comes from the CBN News in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And you can get those for free, Fred. I just called an 800 number to get this one.
They want $31 for 6 months.
Well, I just ordered one and I got it for free. Yeah. And that's, they have them on all kinds of different issues, and this one was on aspartame. But there's your warning. You got to watch that stuff. That equal sugar and the NutraSweet that's in just about everything now that used to be sweetened with sugar has got NutraSweet or aspartame in it.
Well, I had an opportunity to buy some Blue Bunny yogurt, and I was looking at it, and I looked at it to see what they used as a sweetener, and I see aspartame. So I didn't buy it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's been on the market almost 30 years, Fred, and they're still having complaints about it. And they don't seem to go away. They're persistent. So maybe there's a possibility that we can get the Food and Drug Administration or somebody out there in Washington to take a fresh look at that and see if they might want to consider selling it only under prescription or something. Okay, Fred. Now we're going to give you an opportunity to bring up an article of shortness and sweetness.
Well, I don't know how short and sweet this is going to be, but we, unfortunately, much of the change coming out of Washington has been radical and anti-family. To briefly illustrate, and this comes from the Family Research Council, Gary L. Bayer, president, and that's at 713th Street Northwest, Suite 500, Washington, D.C. Well, it says that the Clinton administration continues to push behind the scenes to permit homosexuals to serve in the military. Believe it or not, on September 9th, the Defense Department's new gay and lesbian employees group, GLOBE, sponsored a Celebrate Diversity Day. Senior officers were urged to sit through films such as, quote, On Being Gay, unquote, a grossly biased account of the origins of homosexuality. It is hard to imagine a more perverse use of our hard-earned tax money. It also goes on to say that at the stroke of his pen, President Clinton undid the anti-abortion policies that Gary Bayer helped implement when he worked for President Ronald Reagan. Last month's population conference at Cairo, Vice President Al Gore led a U.S. delegation that included U.S. Congresswoman Pat Schroeder and Jane Fonda, you remember Hanoi Jane, as well as private advisors such as feminist leader Bella Abzug. Pro-lifers were not welcomed. Some were actually harassed. Even
Okay, we dealt with that on the last show, didn't we, Fred?
attacked. I don't know. Did we?
Is that about the end of it, or are you going to read the whole thing?
No.
Okay. Well, anyway, Fred, we talked about that thing and how they, you were telling how they even actually kept pro-life people out of certain parts
Yeah,
of
they
the...
snapped, they pulled the microphones out of their hands.
Uh-huh.
Actually, a few of them were attacked.
So what's the gist of this article here? What's
Well,
he trying to get at on that?
We should vote for people who are supporters of family values.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, we're the ones who put them in office, and we deserve what we get if we put them in. So we better look to see what they've done, look at the record.
Okay, Fred, well, we're going to shift gears here a little bit now. We're going to talk about something I know that's been on your mind over the years. And first of all, since we're going to, both these kind of in a roundabout way deal with Janet Reno. So first of all, we're going to bring this little article up that was on the AP Wire on 10/16/94. I don't know if it got much play in the papers, probably didn't. But there was a private burial ceremony down in Waco, Texas, Fred.
Yes, the last of the victims. And
Yeah.
I say victims with a capital V.
And the Davidians buried as paupers, Fred. There was even an unmarked pauper's grave. 28 bodies were put in there Saturday, including cult leader David Koresh's wife and children. These bodies were unclaimed, and some of them were unidentified, and were the last of the cult members killed in the fiery end of a 51-day standoff with federal agents. And, of course, they were buried by the county officials in a ceremony at Restland Cemetery. They've been sitting in a Fort Worth morgue ever since April of '93, Fred. And they estimate about 80 people were killed in that burnout. But evidently the county finally said we're going to bury them because the bodies have decayed to such an extent that there's no good for any evidence there anymore. So they decided to go ahead and clear up that chapter in history by burying those. And of course, Fred, there was also, of the 80 cult members who died, also 4 federal agents died over the course of that standoff.
Were those federal agents killed by other federal agents?
Well, Fred, there's supposed to be some investigating going on, but we don't know what's ever going to come of it. I know the congressman from Michigan, I think it's John Conyers.
Yeah, but
He supposedly was going to look into this. And
it died since.
he told Janet Reno that she was ashamed of her profession and called for her resignation. And then the whole thing stopped.
Well, what they ought to do is prosecute her and the others who were in on that massacre. Actually, it was a massacre. Those people never had a chance.
Well, Fred, interestingly, over the weekend, the same group that used the psychological warfare on the Waco group, they turned up in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, to do crowd control down there.
Oh.
The same psychological.
Well, those people
military.
down there are in for trouble, and especially if they do the same thing they did in Waco.
Yeah, great big giant loudspeakers they brought in and just played all kinds of torture music and everything, and then poor little kids in there that were innocent, they had to listen to that stuff for days, you know.
Well, I would say that most of those people, if not all of them, were innocent because they didn't do anything wrong. They didn't go out and attack anybody. They could have picked up Koresh anytime he went into town or jogged around the compound. They could have picked him up, no trouble at all. He invited them to come out and take a look at his guns. They never went.
Mm-hmm.
When the federal agents were in the gun dealers there inquiring as to what kind of guns he had bought.
Well, Fred, that gas they used for 6 hours has been outlawed for warfare, and it is highly volatile when it's
So that's why there should be a prosecution of Janet Reno and company.
If you filled up this room with that gas and you lit a match, Fred, the whole room would blow up. That's what happened, no matter where. If it came from a spark from the tanks that are crashing in the walls, or it came from a spark inside, or whatever, that powder from that gas, that poisonous gas. But they said that some people that have studied that poisonous gas, Fred, that said those kids were probably dead because 6 hours of breathing that stuff and trying to get away from it, it was just being pumped in there continuously. That there's no way those kids could survive that, let alone adults surviving it. Okay, we're going to take a call here, and there's the Cowphone logo. Yeah,
Oh,
We're
what a
on the air.
lovely-looking cow.
so go ahead, caller. You're the first caller today, and you're on the air.
All right. Who am I? Is this Chuck?
Could be.
Who's the other gentleman on with you? What's his name?
Fred W.B.
Oh.
Stafford.
Hello there, State Representative.
State represent. Excuse me?
You sound like a state representative.
Well, I'll take that as a compliment. I understand one of you is running for office. Is that correct, Chuck? Are you running for office?
Are you running, Fred, or am I?
I'm not running. You know
Fred's
that.
running away from office.
Yeah.
I'm running.
What office are you running for?
United States Congress.
United States Congress. So then you're pretty well versed in like the Constitution and stuff. You know a lot about it.
I don't know. This sounds like some kind of setup. What's the...
Well, no, not really. I'm a student here at the university, and we have to study the Constitution and stuff. And I just thought that our United States congressman should be well versed in the Constitution. I was going to ask you a few questions, and because I want to make sure that you're well qualified enough to represent the people of this district in Congress.
Are you in any political campaign yourself?
Am I?
Yeah.
No, sir.
All right. Well, I don't have the Constitution right in front of me, but I guess you can ask some questions. If I can't answer them, I'm sure Fred the True Stafford can answer them.
Well, I tell you what, I don't want to ask you any real hard ones. We're just going to go over some basics,
All right.
Fine.
Oh, you're up for this?
Sure.
Yeah, at least for one of them. We got several calls lined up behind you there, and of course we want to mention, Fred, that we've got a bevy of beautiful women in the other room taking the phone calls.
A bevy of beautiful women.
Well, we used to
Oh, would
say
that be a herd of like beautiful cattle, or is that how you relate to women?
no. We used to say a bevy of beautiful broads, but the PC crowd got on us, so we changed it to a bevy of beautiful women.
Fred was mentioning family values earlier. I was wondering if Fred could just give me a brief overview of his idea of family values. What do you say, Fred?
Well, I would say that the entire family, beginning with the unborn, and after they're born, euthanasia would be something that I would be opposed to and be contrary to family values, and to things that are unnatural, such as homosexuality.
Now, those homosexuals, those are people that same sex,
Yes.
right? Any same sex type.
Right. In other words, what God says, I go along with God. Let Him make the decision.
Well, God makes the decision.
Yes.
Okay, so homosexuals bad. They're ruining our country.
Well, I don't know if they're ruining our country, but they certainly aren't helping it.
They're not helping it.
Well, Fred, I'll tell you one thing. They're good taxpayers. Their average salary is about
Yeah.
$55,000.
Right. That part is good, and they deserve credit for getting the education and the experience to qualify for such earnings.
If they have such high education and high a high tax rate, and they're in a good tax bracket, that kind of sounds like they're helping our country a little bit, doesn't it?
Well, that does.
Well, so you're kind of wrong then, aren't you?
No,
when you say they don't
I'm
help our
not.
country?
I'm not wrong. When they invade churches like they have done at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York on December the 10th, 1989,
Yes, sir.
and interrupted the services there, stopped the Cardinal John O'Connor from speaking, threw condoms over the audience, screamed and cursed, desecrated the communion host. That certainly is not conduct that I would say is good, while others marched down the street half naked or naked.
Didn't they throw contaminated blood around, too?
Oh, contaminant. Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Was that so all the homosexuals were at St. Patrick's Cathedral that day?
That was at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Two other cathedrals in the New York area, one in Brooklyn and one in Rockefeller Center, have been subject to similar invasions.
Okay. So all the homosexuals involved in that, so that's all of them then? But I haven't heard about that, so I just want to make sure that...
I know
just want
that.
to make sure I know that all the homosexuals
Well,
are
let's see.
there.
There's about 1.5% of the population is the homosexual exclusively. So what's that figure out to? 2.6, maybe 3 million at the most?
About 3 million, yeah.
Okay. So I don't think all 3 million were there marching that day, Fred.
No, just...
How can we really say that all homosexuals are bad if there's only maybe a group of... let's just round and guess, say 100 people were there. How can we?
Well,
how can we
no,
really say that
there were
Fred,
over 1,000 there.
Fred, you yourself said that. You know, they're educated. They're well
Yes,
educated.
but we have a lot of educated idiots in our country.
Such as yourself, possibly.
No, I'm sorry, I don't qualify because I'm not that well educated.
But how much education do you have?
Okay, that's
I
about
have
10
enough to
questions
know
now.
difference from right from wrong.
Well, Fred, we gave him about
Yeah.
10 questions there, and he was getting a little argumentative with you. But, you know, Fred, in my brochure here, I deal with that issue.
Yes.
And all I say is this. All Americans are born with equal rights,
Yeah.
as spelled out in the Constitution and numerous other laws on the books. And God knows we've got plenty of laws on the books.
Yes.
You're probably violating 10 laws just sitting there. Okay, no special rights should be granted to a certain group of people based solely, and I mean solely, on the deviant sexual acts that they have learned to perform on each other.
Mm-hmm.
Short and to the point, Fred. Why should they be elevated into a special class above the rest of the population
True.
and got given special rights? There's enough laws on the books on that subject already, Fred. Okay, we're going to try and take another call here on the cow phone. So go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Hello, Chuck. I enjoy the show.
Okay, thank you.
My question is for Fred. He referred to the cult members down there in Waco as victims. I was wondering, I agree that we probably fired first and that we did cause the fire, but didn't they have 50 days of opportunity to come out and have their say in court? Didn't they have every opportunity to come out?
I don't think so. I don't think they wanted them to come out. They would have shot them if they came out.
You really believe that?
I
they would have
believe
done
that.
on national
I think
TV?
they would. I think they would have done the same thing as they did to that man in Idaho, where they killed his wife and his son and his dog.
Okay,
Because he supposedly had a gun that was 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch with a sawed-off barrel. It's shorter than it should be.
So
And
you
I don't trust the
don't trust the
ATF.
government.
I don't trust them, to be very frank with you. When they do things like that, when they could have picked up Koresh running around in Waco, why didn't they do it? He came in every Saturday night and played in a band there.
He wasn't carrying any weapons at the time.
I know, but
You don't need to, though.
He,
If
they
they got-
invited him. He invited them to come out there when they were in the gun dealers checking up on the guns that he purchased, and they didn't come out.
To see, the agents already had enough evidence. That's what they used as a...
And when they went out there, how many agents did we lose?
Well, we lost 4, but what I'm saying is they had enough evidence to arrest Koresh anywhere in a time span of up to 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
Matter of fact, the ATF agents practiced that raid for 30 days because one of the first people that was interviewed, one of the first agents on the scene who was interviewed said, and it was a female, she said, "I don't know what went wrong. We practiced this raid for over a month."
I agree that it was all mishandled, okay? I agree with that. But if the police are outside my door asking me to come out, I come out. Wouldn't you do the same? And
Well-
and have your say in court? Or would you hold up and shoot back?
It's, well, the shooting was all there right at the beginning. The rest of it was pretty much a standoff for 51 days after the
But do you
initial...
come out? This is America now, and we're all treated the same. All treated the same. Just because you're a member of a cult doesn't make you special. Just like what you were saying earlier. You don't have any special privileges. Nobody does. All treated the same. You come out. You have your say in court.
Okay, unfortunately they didn't. So it wasn't just, so we still can't, unfortunately they didn't come out. There was a 51-day standoff. That does not justify the United States government with all their might and power killing 80 people.
And going in with armor and army
Now the
against
same,
them.
Chance to come out. They didn't come out.
that's right, they didn't come out, but does that justify killing them?
What happened, I think,
If it does, then they can do the same thing to you, and we can justify that too.
yeah, if the police are outside my door or your door, you're going to come out. You know it, okay?
Why did they have to solve the thing? Let's get it over with one way or another. Either kill them or get them out of there. Why does it have to be solved with somebody dying at the end and then claiming that's solving the problem? They ended it with 80 people dying. Is that solving anything?
Those 80 people had common sense. They had the choice to come out if they wanted to.
Not really.
Died. It was definitely a gross neglect on the part of our law enforcement.
Well,
I agree
it was neglect on both sides because
on both sides.
once the standoff started, then they didn't know how to get out of it peacefully. But that doesn't justify the way it did end, and them pumping in that gas for 6 hours.
And then I think they lit it too. If you watch the tapes, I think that the tank did light it.
Well, the same group, the same psychological warfare group from the United States Army, which was used against American citizens, is now being used in Haiti. And before Waco, the same psychological warfare group was used in Panama to drive Noriega out of his stronghold. So these people are, I mean, what are we doing using American?
What do we trust?
What do
we can't trust our government?
What are we doing using American troops against Americans for?
That's true. That's in the Constitution. We should never do that.
Yeah.
But so who do we trust? Can we trust our government? Now you're running for office. Can we trust you if you're elected?
Well, I'm going to try and study all sides of an issue and before I make a decision, and I'm not just going to vote because one political action committee or special interest dumps $5,000 in my pocket, because first of all, I won't accept it. I'll try and vote the right way and be honest about it.
Good. I enjoy talking with you guys.
I won't knuckle under to special interests, hopefully.
I enjoy talking with you. Have a good day.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Well,
Fred, there is a lot of angles to that thing in Waco, but the bottom line is there's 80 people in the grave, 84 people including
I don't think
four
they were
agents.
given the opportunity to come out.
Well, the attorneys for the Branch Davidians said that they were afraid to come out.
Yeah.
They're afraid that they would be killed in jail or killed somewhere along the line. And it does say here that Waco, or that Koresh did end up taking a bullet in the head. And that place was ringed with several highly trained sharpshooters. So, we'll leave it up to your imagination. Okay, I think we got another call here, Fred, but you know, we were going to talk about Waco, we dealt with that, Fred, and then something else Janet Reno is doing that looks like it might be right after heavy lobbying, and we've talked about this for several years on the show now, is the illegal immigration. And they they're starting to move on that, at least in San Diego, which is one of the main funnels of illegal aliens into the country. So we're going to take a caller here. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
How you doing, Chuck?
All right.
Well, you were talking earlier about people that are getting special privileges, and special laws put on the books for them, like those homosexuals.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree that, it just seems rather odd that some people need the special privilege that's already set out in the Constitution. And what do you think about all those, demonstrations and stuff about, like the women getting the right to vote, that they had to go on marches and civil rights marches and stuff like that? They were already also in the Constitution, and still they still put them laws out. Think that was really necessary then?
Well, evidently it was. They didn't have the right to vote. Fred, you were alive then. What was going on back
I
then?
wasn't alive then.
1920s?
Well, I was 3 years old up.
So you weren't keeping the women from voting then?
No. And I think women deserve the right to vote. They have the same responsibilities that we have. And quite frankly, in some instances, not with so much with the radical women, but women have been a steadying force and an inspirational force in our country.
Caller, for women to vote, that was something that they were being denied, but it was wrote in the Constitution that all men are created equal, and unfortunately somebody decided to keep them out of the voting process, and so they overturned that. But in the case of homosexuals, I don't think anyone's denying them the right to vote.
No, but talking about getting equal treatment and stuff, and not the discrimination or whatever that they seem to be up against and stuff like that. It seems like, I guess that's why they're out there marching and stuff.
Uh-huh.
So do you think they should get some kind of Civil Rights Act and stuff like that too? Like
No, I think that if they use the laws that are already on the books, they'll be treated just like anybody else, and they'll have equal access to everything and anything in this country, because if they're born Americans, they have those rights. And if they want to be fighting for those rights, they should do it through the courts and point out all the laws are already on the books, because there's plenty of them on the books, going all the way back to the Constitution, which gives everybody inalienable rights. In other words, rights that can't be taken away from you, no matter what color you are, what sexual orientation, whether you're male and female. There's inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's why there's such an argument about abortion, because that's an inalienable right to life. And that's been taken away from the most innocent members of society, the unborn, up to 9 months. Up to 8 months, 3 weeks, 6 days, and 23 hours, and 59 minutes, the right to life is not given to that.
Yeah, but you know, kind of the right of choice is kind of important too in our society. About mothers or mothers-to-be or women,
Well,
their
you
choice
know,
about what to do with their bodies.
you make a choice when you decide to have sex, because I believe sex is for the reproduction of the human race, and you take that responsibility when you
What
have
about those-
sex.
what
And if you
about
don't want children, abstain.
What about those people that are unfortunately raped and become pregnant that way?
Well, that's a very small number of people in our country, less than 1%.
So we're just gonna say that's too bad that what happened to you, and now you're gonna have to have this child for the
No.
rest of your life?
Maybe this is where Fred and I might part company, but I don't think that anybody should be forced at gunpoint or to have that baby. That they know, everybody knows right from wrong, Fred. And that person knows when they commit an abortion that they're killing what's inside of them. It's obvious. It's natural. It's kicking inside of them. They know there's life in there.
When my daughter had an abortion, my oldest daughter, she was told it was a blob of tissue by Planned Parenthood and in the abortuary. And when she saw the arms and legs come out, the head, she knew otherwise.
Right. She knew then that that was life.
And it caused all kinds of problems for over 10 years after that. And I didn't know that she had an abortion to begin with. And she had counseling and counseling and counseling. Finally, she got a halfway decent counselor that got to the core of the problem. So she's been able to start to put her life together again after her mother and I had to bail her out of and pay her security deposit to get another apartment when she was evicted because she lost 2 jobs.
Well, you know, Fred,
Now, people don't realize what some of those girls go through.
if they're given all the education on that, and a person still decides that they're going to kill that life inside of them.
You know, I had a
It's
young friend who made the choice to have sex with someone, and unfortunately she got pregnant, and she was at the point where she's going to take her own life because she couldn't face the future with having this baby, and she opted for an abortion. And I thank God that she did that because she's still around and she wouldn't be here otherwise.
Well, I'm not for holding a gun to somebody's head and making them have a baby, but I think that there should be all the education to let them know that that is life inside of them so that they can make a rational decision.
Well,
And
maybe,
in your daughter's case, she was fooled into
maybe
thinking.
we could get the schools to show the what do they call that? The sound where they ultrasound where they take that and show the baby.
Like if there was a window on a mother's stomach so that they could see what's actually in there, there'd be a lot less abortions, I'm sure.
I think
Okay.
that abortion is okay as long as there's a lot of education and a lot of true information.
No, I'm 100% pro-life, but I'm not going to stick a gun or force the government to stick guns to people's heads or say you're going to have the baby or else. It's still got to come down to individuals' choice, and if they make the wrong choice, they got to deal with it with God.
So is it you're for choice or for abortion? Or I mean, it's one way or the other. It's got to be. You can't say, well, I'm for choice and there should be a choice, but then you say 100% against abortion.
That's right. I'm 100% pro-life, but do you want me going around with a machine gun and making people have babies?
No, but it's going to come down to a vote eventually, or a Supreme Court decision, and it's going to be the voice of the people and the way of the attitude of the country at that time that decides it, just like it did back in 73 or
73 when the Supreme Court created that law.
Yep.
And it should they're not a law-making body. It's Congress is the law-making body. So that is unconstitutional.
Well, they're a check, is what they are. They check the Congress and for constitutionality of the law versus choice.
No, I'm pro-life, but like I say, you can just go so far. You can educate. If a person's given all the facts on this issue, there would be a lot less abortions.
Okay, well, thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you. And they're not, Fred. You know what? When you go to Planned Parenthood, it seems like, from what I've read and over the years, it's kind of geared to get that abortion because there's money involved in it.
Well, that's what my
But
daughter
it's not
found
Planned
out.
Parenthood in most cases. They don't.
No.
They don't run many clinics, though, do they? At least in
Sure they do.
in this area, they don't.
Well, they don't have any in this area, but you know, under FACE, the Clinton administration wants to put one in here.
Yeah. Well, you know, Fred, what's even worse than that, this RU-486 is going to be tested fairly in the next few months in the United States. And once that gets into the country, what are you going to do? There'll
What
be
can
thousands
you-
of abortion
What
clinics.
can you do?
Millions of them. Every bathroom in the country will be an abortion
Shouldn't be legalized.
That's the only recourse we have to stop it from coming in, but they've already agreed to do
I know.
American trial tests. And there's a couple of doctors now that are mixing prescription drugs together that are already on the market and giving them to women, and they're aborting their babies that way. So, you know, it's getting out of hand here, Fred. They at one
Well,
point they're
We're in rebellion against God's laws,
well, that's what it basically boils down to, Fred, is rebellion against God.
right? And
Because that's who you have to justify
we're the
it
ones
with.
who are going to have to answer for that too.
Mhm. Okay, I think we got another call here on the cow phone, and we're going to take that now. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Hello there. How are you doing today, you guys?
All right.
Hey, you're looking pretty sharp there. Say,
Fred,
what do we
he's always
got that debate tonight? Anything? Is there going to be questions right from the floor, or is it all going to be what the League of Women Voters want?
Well, their usual ones, they ask the questions.
Now, I've got a printout here of what the format is, if I can find it real quick. Just brought that with, just in case somebody asked that question, Fred. What'd I do, give that to you?
No.
Well, anyway, it's a brief opening statement for each candidate. And then it goes, which is here it is down here. Each candidate will receive equal time for an opening statement. I think it's just a 1-minute opening statement. This will be followed by questions from a moderator using the following format. And then since there's 4 candidates, each candidate will get 2 minutes on each question. And I think there's a 1-minute opening statement and a 2-minute closing statement for each candidate, and the debate runs 90 minutes total. And here's the other part of it.
You have to submit your questions in writing, and then they decide which question gets asked?
Let's see.
I mean, I don't like to go to something that's already rigged.
A question and answer period will follow after the 1-minute opening statements, lasting 60 minutes with prepared questions from the League of Women Voters and the Western Wisconsin Press Club. So that'll be pretty fair questions.
No, that's a,
That would be
fair.
so
They won't ask those guys if they're for abortion or against abortion and things like that.
Yeah, and they'll avoid the homosexual thing to
Right.
protect Steve Gunderson. And do you think character counts in this campaign? I mean, the Republicans are always hollering about the president, character counts. Well, why don't Steve Gunderson tell us if he's gay or not? What's he hiding from? He's either in or out.
Well,
Out there in the magazines, he's out, and when he's back home, he's in.
Well, I guess he knows the political climate back here in cow country is more conservative than the political climate in New York City or Washington.
Why don't the press give you more coverage? We always see a Gunderson in there, but we never see any of your comments. Are you giving them any statements or anything?
Well, yeah, I fax out news releases from time to time, but there's almost a total 100% blackout of anything that doesn't have to do with Gunderson or Stour. Even Stour gets left out from time to time, but they've really given, like the Leader Telegram has given several fluff pieces to Gunderson on different issues that have come up, including the money for the Foster tornado relief and for whole milk in the schools. And I mean, it's just, they've geared everything up so that they can end up getting Gunderson's opinion on half a dozen different issues without having to ask the other candidates. And they claim that that's legal that way because it's just a news story. And they're getting a congressman's viewpoint on it, but basically it's just slanting things, and it's a blackout of the other candidates, and there's no way they can get around it. It's obvious that.
You know, in America, Chuck, it's sad that that happens in America, where we're supposed to have freedom of speech, and your views are just as important and valuable as the next guy. But to control elections and to rig it, I'll tell you.
You want to give him some help there, caller, and get his literature out there to overcome that blackout.
Yeah, it's
And get your friends to do so likewise, because they treated Don Brill the same way.
Yeah, it's too bad, but
Brill got plenty of press when he was called the new Adolf here in the Eau Claire area. When they were talking about him being pro-Nazi and stuff, he just couldn't get it. I mean, he had to shoo the reporters away.
well, who's writing all this negative stuff? Who's the reporter?
Well, the Leader Telegram reporter is Eric Lindquist, but he's just
Yeah, but he's a Democrat.
he has to turn that over to Doug Mell, and then Doug Mell looks it over and does his censoring, and then it goes on, I'm sure, to the editor or the owners before it hits the press. But the things I've faxed in there get thrown in the paper can. They're not interested in my viewpoint. They're interested in re-electing Steve Gunderson. That's the bottom line.
It's sad, you know, and they use people that buy the paper with good intentions of you're going to get the truth and unbiased reporting.
That's not
But
that.
it's so rigged, it's pathetic, and yet people are being duped in this. I don't know how they can keep getting away with it.
They make a mockery of the truth. That's what it is.
Yeah, well,
It's almost you don't want to throw the word conspiracy out, because then they can say you're a conspiracy nut. But it's pretty much evident that it's a coordinated effort to give Gunderson the airwaves and the radio and TV and newspapers, give him the majority of the coverage, and then just ignore everyone else by saying that they're not a viable candidate.
the owner of the paper ought to be real proud of himself that they're controlling elections like this, and he's supposed to be respectable in the community. I don't look at that being too respectable.
Well, during the primary, the Leader Telegram only gave their big, fancy, fluffy spread on 6 of the candidates and left 2 out. Well, now here after the primary, I asked them if they were going to give me one of those, and they said, no, we can't do that. So
Why are they afraid of you?
So I didn't get the nice, big, full-page spread like all the other 6 candidates did in the primary. Now 4 of those 6 are gone. Those other 2 candidates that are in there, they're one step ahead of me, because they both got the nice, fluffy write-up in the Leader Telegram that I didn't get, and the other independent candidate didn't get. So that kind of lowers us one step. But what it is the media, they decide that they're going to have a mini election and decide who are considered major candidates. So they narrow it down to the Democrats and Republicans, and they begrudgingly let the Republicans in. If they had it their way, this would be a one-party country, and it would be a Democratic Party, and they wouldn't even let the Republicans in on the process. But they begrudgingly narrowed it down to 2 candidates and said, okay, these are the candidates, the other 2 people don't have a chance. So they're doing censorship by doing it that way. But we do have a chance, and if the media would give equal access to all the candidates involved in a race, it would be a different story. But they're part of the group that likes to narrow it down and agree on who the candidates are, and by doing that, they're having their own election ahead of time. But Fred, you were going to say something about that.
Well, I was going to say something. You might say the veracity of the paper and so forth, as far as morality is concerned, you can go to the articles that they had positive for the homosexuals for 9 days, and you can also go to the attacks upon the Christians on Palm Sunday and Easter Sunday. They attacked the Christian people here because they stand up for principle, for God's principles. So you can't expect too much from the Leader Telegram in that area. You know they're going to give you the shaft.
Fred, why don't the Leader Telegram interview Gunderson's supposedly wife, Rob? Because apparently he talks more freer and tells the truth, and he's not hiding anything like Steve is. Why don't you think they interview him?
They don't want that to get out because they know it's going to hurt Steve's candidacy.
Well, you know, the last article that they had where they mentioned me in the Leader Telegram, they started the article out by saying that I was unemployed and a former narcotics conviction for narcotics. Well, anybody that knows anything about drugs knows that narcotics is codeine, heroin, morphine, has to do with needles, you know, pictures of people laying in an alley dead of an overdose.
Did you?
I didn't have anything to do with narcotics. It was marijuana. But the Leader Telegram now has picked up on that drumbeat, and I confronted Eric Lindquist, and he said, well, that's just the way we did it. Now, I just wrote the article and gave it to Doug Mell, and he made the decision. But that is an open attack and trying to make me look less than equal to the other candidates, like we talked about last week about how they did with the Jews in Germany, where they lowered them down to where people thought they were less than human, and then it made it easier for people to agree with killing them. Well, they're not trying to physically kill me, they're just trying to kill me off as a candidate. So they start out the article by saying I'm unemployed. Well, when Eric Lindquist is not at the Leader Telegram writing articles, he's unemployed, and so is Doug Mell. So it's just a matter of what are they, you know, it's just a matter of making me look like I'm not viable because I'm unemployed. Well, there's 40 million people in this country that are below the poverty line. So when they're talking about me being unemployed, they're talking about those 40 million people. And according to the way the Leader Telegram writes, they would just soon flush all 40 million of us down the tube and forget about us.
That's too bad. Well, it'd be interesting to see how they cover this debate tonight, if it's just two candidates or if they include other two candidates. I think they should be fair and be honest with the people in Eau Claire so we can hear the truth and quit hiding Gunderson and bring it out and tell the people the truth.
I'll tell you, caller,
Every time you bring up voting record of Steve Gunderson, you're a liar, or you're distorting it, or you're attacking him personally. How long can they protect this guy?
I'll tell you, caller, most of the media in western Wisconsin wouldn't know the truth and fairness if it came up and bit them in the rear end.
Well, anyway,
They've got an agenda, and the agenda doesn't include the conservatives or the Christians, I'll guarantee you.
Well, look, one good thing, Chuck, your program is getting it out to the people. It's going to backfire on the Leader Telegram and the owners of the paper. They're not squeaky clean from the looks of this.
Well,
but anyway, keep up the good job, you guys, and hang in there, Chuck. Don't quit.
Okay, well, thank you, caller. Well, you know, Fred, it'll be interesting to read tomorrow's paper to see exactly how they do handle this debate. But going on to something else, Fred, I just got the latest Howard Phillips Issues and Strategy bulletin, which is an expensive little bulletin. It costs $100 a year for subscription. And I just so happen to get it for free, Fred, because I'm
Well, that's good.
below the poverty line. But it talks about government schools sent out a survey and where they asked 12-year-olds to tell all about their sexual experiences. This is in Fairfax County Schools in Virginia. And what kind of sexual experiences should 12-year-olds already have that the schools are worried about doing surveys on them? And here's some of the questions. Have you ever had sex? Sexual intercourse, yes or no? And what's it any business of the schools to know what a 12-year-old is doing anyway? If you have ever had sex, did you or your partner use a condom? If you had ever had sex, did you ever drink alcohol or use drugs before you had sex? This is 12-year-olds, Fred. I can see them asking this to 18, 19-year-olds. If you ever had sex, with how many people have you had sex? One of the answers here is one person, two persons, three or more people. If you had ever had sex, how old were you when you had sex for the first time? One of the questions is less than 9 years old, 9 to 10, 11 to 12, 13 to 14, or 15 or more. So this was given to 12-year-olds and above in the government schools of Virginia. I think we got a couple more calls lined up here, Fred, so we better take them. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Okay, enjoyed the show. It's very entertaining.
All right, thank you.
I just had a question regarding your stance on the abortion issue.
Yeah.
You said that you were pro-choice, correct?
No, pro-life, 100%.
Pro-life. Okay, now I'll interpret the pro-life stance, correct me if I'm wrong, that there should be no exceptions regarding an abortion.
The only exception would be in the actual, if the mother is actually dying in the process of giving birth.
So, and earlier you stated like if in case of a rape.
No, I didn't. I'm not. The only exception I have is the life of the mother, and that's not really an exception. That's just a matter of protecting the mother because she can give birth again. And if she's going to die, then the mother has the up on it. But that's what, Fred, 1 out of 1,000 or more cases, probably not even that many where that problem comes up.
Well, do you feel if abortion was made illegal, do you think they still would occur?
Abortions?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've always occurred ever since the beginning.
Beginning of time.
Ever since there's been men and women.
Yeah, I agree. So, I guess for me, I'm kind of a realist. Don't you think that? I guess I'd rather, if they're going to happen, I'd like to have them be safe. Versus, I mean, if they're illegal, don't you think there would be a lot of the back alley?
They're not really safe in some places where those doctors cut a woman and she bleeds to death, as happened in a number of cases.
Oh, I agree.
And that's in abortion clinics. Abortion clinics should be under the same health laws as hospitals are.
I agree, 100%.
And they're not.
Yeah, some of them aren't even manned by nurses and doctors. They're just people that run an abortion clinic that know how to do that operation.
I guess for me, I'm not for abortion, but I'm not going to tell somebody else what to do. And I just would rather have safe ones rather than have illegal, unsafe abortions. It's much like prohibition. Alcohol. We tried banning that. That didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I believe you have the same view in regard to, decriminalization of drugs. Do you not?
What? What about them?
I mean, take the criminal element out of drugs. Because it's going to happen no matter what, right? As long as there's people that want to do drugs, there's going to be drug dealers, right?
I'm not for legalizing any of the drugs, but I do make a distinction between marijuana and heroin. Unfortunately, the Leader Telegram and Channel 13 don't.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
But
I mean, do you think we should try? I mean, alcohol is a drug, right?
Right.
I mean, should we also make that illegal?
It was tried once, but
it didn't work, did it?
Thanks to Al Capone and others, they got
exactly.
They got plenty of it through.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess why are we trying to do it then? Why would we want to try and do it with with other drugs?
Because of the destructive nature of the drugs. There's all kinds of different aspects, and the main one is some of the drugs will physically kill you deader than a doornail.
Yeah, like alcohol.
Yep.
Yeah. So
I'm not for alcohol either. I don't drink and I don't use drugs.
That's great.
I don't smoke.
Yeah, I'm not being a proponent of drugs by any means. I'm just, I think it's kind of a contradiction. Wouldn't you agree? To have one drug illegal but another legal?
Well, unfortunately, the laws of the land say alcohol is legal for most cases 18 and above, some cases 21 and above. I don't agree with it because I've seen the destructive effects of alcohol, not only in my own family, but I've worked in places where I've seen people that don't have minds left from drinking. And it's a very destructive drug, and that it is a drug, and people are addicted to it. They can also get addicted to tobacco, marijuana, heroin. Any kind of drug can get you addicted, and that's the reasons why a lot of these drugs are illegal. Some of them cause all kinds of problems, like LSD. There's a lot of people that have messed up their minds for life.
Terribly.
So we just don't want to have a blanket legalization just because people are using these drugs. But on the other hand, I think that we should go after these drugs at the borders and don't even allow them into the country to begin with. And unfortunately, we're out of time. I want to thank you for calling, caller, and we're sorry we didn't get to the other calls. But this has been the Kyle Report with Chuck Lee and Fred Stafford, and of course Linda Holte on the camera, and Roy Rogers Hoff, who was named after Wild Bill Hickok, and all the other staff. And we'll see you right here again next time at 9 p.m., I think, Fred. Right here on the Kyle Report. And don't forget to come to the debate tonight.
It's not next week, though.
7 p.m., North High School.
You're not going to be on next week, are you?
The first week in...
Yeah.
I think I'm on next week. This is just the 17th. So thank you, and we'll see you. Good afternoon.